All right, so we are now recording. Let's start with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'nasan lanu es taraso Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. So we are now 2 weeks, or we have 2 more classes before Passover. We have this Monday, we have next Monday. In 2 weeks from today, it's going to be the intermediate days already of the holiday. So I wanted to spend this week and next week discussing some of the practical things we need to do for Passover, and also the spiritual component. I think we're going to put the practical thing till the end of the class, because hopefully then more people will come on. And of course, we want as many people as possible to gain the practical know-how of what they need to do. So we are going to put that on the side, and we're going to go to explaining the spiritual energy. And I thought it would be nice to actually go through the Seder step by step, and just explain very little bit about each step to sort of understand spiritually what's happening and how we practically apply it. Because for a lot of people, I mean, they know it's very, very important, but they don't really know how to integrate it into their own lives. So 3,334 years ago, all right, that was the original Passover, when our people, our ancestors, us in a previous lifetime, because we were all there, that we were those people, we are a reincarnation of these people, were liberated from the Egyptian exile. Now, just to put it in perspective, how long were we slaves there in Egypt? So we were in Egypt a total of 210 years, of which we were slaves for 116 years, of which the harsh, horrific, oppressive slavery was 86 years. Now, this is a tremendous kindness of God, because when God originally told Abraham, the first Jew, that his children would suffer this persecution as part of the process that would eventually make us God's people, we were supposed to be enslaved for 400 years. We're supposed to go through this harsh slavery for 400 years to cleanse us and purify us and make us God's people. And God, in his kindness, and I'm not going to go into the details now of how he did it, because, you know, that will take too much time. You take it on faith, that he made from 400 years in Egypt to 210, from 210, 116 in slavery, and from 116, 86 years, which is still a long time, but much less than 400, where we really were in a very, very, very harsh slavery. And again, we were there because we know the Arizal says we are a reincarnation of that generation. We probably forgot, but we all were there. And then we left Egypt, and then we received the Torah, right? 50 days later, we received the Torah. We became God's people. Now, the Lodge Rebbe explains, it says in the Megillah of Esther, just coming from Purim, and the days shall be remembered and done, which the sages say mean that when we remember these days, when we think of them, we are spiritually reenacting them. So the energy of Passover, and this is the entire theme I'm going to repeat tonight as many times as I can imagine, more times than you can imagine. I'm going to say this again and again and again and again and again and again. This is the theme of Passover. This is the theme of the Seder. As we remember, we relive. We re-access that same energy. That is why we are doing everything we're doing for the holiday in general, and specifically, of course, what we're going to speak tonight about, which is the Seder. So what energy are we trying to reenact? Well, God's divine benevolence. God, Nisan, the month that just began on Shabbos, means miracles. The whole Exodus was pure kindness on God's part. It was It was undeserved kindness. It wasn't something we worked for. We just got it as a free gift. We like those types of miracles. We like that type of kindness. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for. So therefore, that's what we want to access. And when we remember and react and discuss everything that happened at the very time it happened, at the time of the Exodus, we discuss the Exodus. We try to relive the Exodus. So we're evoking the energy of the Exodus. And that same energy, that energy of miracles, that energy of undeserved miracles, that energy of God's pure benevolent kindness is what's shining in this world. And that's why this is the most auspicious time for redemption. Our sages say, in Nisan, we were redeemed, and in Nisan, we will be redeemed, because this is the time of redemption. This is the time of God shining his favor on us if we deserve it or not. So when we relive it and think about it and apply it and try to make it real, we're opening up the channels for God to have that shine, for us personally, to experience personal redemption, God's personal benevolence, undeserved miracles, and cosmically for Mashiach. So Passover is a festival of liberation, right? We're celebrating this historic event of 3,334 years ago. We're celebrating the redemption happening today. Our sages say that in every generation, and actually every day, we are supposed to view ourselves of having just experienced the Exodus. Every day, today, I experienced liberation. I was liberated from Egypt. Because freedom, liberation is a constant evolving process. It's not like, well, you left and now you're free forever. No, freedom doesn't work that way. Freedom is a day-by-day experience. So each day in every environment has its equivalent to a Pharaoh, has its equivalent to Egypt, have the threats to our freedom. The biggest threats to our freedom is from within. We are the biggest threat to our own freedom. When we believe certain achievements I can never do, that's beyond me. When we believe, oh, I'm okay how I am, when I'm complacent, when I think these high spiritual things I'll never achieve, when I self-limit myself, that's my Egypt. That's my constriction. That's my Pharaoh. That's the force not letting me free. So Passover is this ongoing process of self-liberation. It's the holiday symbolic of the struggle to renew ourselves from within, to create freedom, to live out our spiritual potential. And that's why we have to remember this every day. Every day we have to leave our Egypt. We have to escape our limits, our temptations, our obstructions. We have to get our soul freed from all the constraints of this physical environment that might be trapping it. We want to live a life in consonance with God's will. We want to serve God and do the Torah and the commandments that's going to remove the anguish of my soul. That's going to remove this inner conflict between the spiritual and the physical. That's going to transcend that. And that's freedom. That's serenity. That's harmony, which is the prelude to the freedom and serenity that the entire world is going to experience with Mashiach. So that's an overarching perspective, what is happening, what we are trying to achieve. And now what I'd like to do is go through the Seder step by step with this perspective to understand what we need to do and to really see how we're doing it. How is the Seder, the soul of each step of the Seder, how is this supposed to help me achieve this personal goal of inner freedom? Because that's the overarching message of everything we're talking about. This is what the Lubavitcher Rebbe explained, that this is all about me about each one of us experiencing and achieving our freedom, our spiritual freedom, getting out of our Egypt and our Pharaoh. So how are we going to do that? So we're going to start with the Seder plate. Okay, so we're focusing tonight on the Seder. And the central point of the Seder is a Seder plate. The Seder plate means there's 3 matzahs. You should have handmade round shmura matzahs, as we'll discuss again towards the end of tonight when we discuss some of the practical concepts. Over that's a plate on which there are 6 food items, 2 triangles of food items. So we have 3 matzahs, 1 Seder plate, 6 food items, 3 and then 1 and then 6. That makes 10. And that is not random. Nothing is random in Judaism. Nothing is random in the Seder. Nothing is random in anything of the laws of Passover or any other of God's laws. So there's specifically 10 items, the 3 matzahs, the 1 Seder plate, and the 6 items on the Seder plate, which tonight at the end, we're going to review what those 6 items are. And this really reflects the structure of our soul, of our human psyche, of our human consciousness, and the 10 dimensions of God, the 10 tools with which God created and sustains this world, and through which he channels his blessings. Again, remember, we want to reenact this. We want to draw down those blessings. We want those blessings to help us free ourselves from our limitations on the way to this personal freedom. So the highlight of everything of the Seder night and the whole Passover, the most spiritual part of the entire Passover, is that flat, perhaps tasteless matzah, just flour and water, the matzah. Matzah is the most godly food that exists. When we eat matzah, we are told we're eating godliness. Every single day of Passover, when we eat matzah, we're eating faith, especially the Seder, the first Seder. We're told the first Seder, we're eating faith. The second Seder, we're eating health. And truly, every single moment of Passover, whenever we eat matzah, you're eating faith, you're eating godliness. Handmade, round, shmura matzah. You live in Chicago, you can buy it in Jewel, you could probably buy it in Hungarian, you could probably buy it in Mariano's. It's worth investing in the matzah. How often do you have the opportunity to eat godliness, to eat faith? Matzah represents humility. It's low, it's simple, it's flour and water, like our simple, selfless, pure bond with God. And of course, the key to freedom is humility. We're craving this freedom because we're still slaves. We could be slaves. We could be slaves to our inhibitions, to our fears, to our habits, to our prejudices. There are layers of ego that prevent us from expressing our true inner self, from reaching our spiritual potential. Our souls can be imprisoned in selfishness and laziness and indifference. Passover means passing over all the obstacles. This is a night of the most enormous potential, as we will discuss. Give me the time between this week and next week. You cannot believe the potential of this night to pass over all the obstacles to achieve true inner freedom. So when you're doing it, when you're sitting at your Seder and we're reading that book, the Haggadah, understand it's the present tense. Egypt, whenever we talk about Egypt, it means your limitations. Pharaoh, view it as your ego. Read this in the present tense. When the Haggadah says we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, that means we are currently slaves to our ego, stuck in our limitations. And how do we get free? We eat the matzah. Eat the matzah. Suspension of ego, flat, tasteless, egoless bread. A lot of times we're scared to suspend our ego. We don't want to lose ourselves. Passover, we're eating the matzah deliberately to suspend our ego, to find ourselves, to find our true self. This is a very ritualized affair. Okay, there's a lot of rituals in Judaism, but the Seder is, I think, one of the most ritualized things in all of Judaism. And there are 15 steps to a Seder, 15 keys to freedom. And what I'd like to do is go through those steps briefly I'm not going to finish it tonight. And I also want to stop a bit early to go through some of the very practical things we need to do. But I want to start to discuss these 15 steps to freedom. And in each one, what spiritually we're supposed to be thinking about, spiritually, how we're supposed to be doing this. And also to sort of remind everyone on how we can do this Seder. So the bulk of this week and next week, we're speaking about the Seder. And then at the end, which means next week at the end, we'll discuss the last days of Passover as well, the 7th and 8th day of Passover. So the first step is called Kaddish, making the Kiddush. We begin the Seder with the first cup of wine. Over the Seder, we're going to have 4 cups of wine. If you want to drink more during the meal, you're welcome to drink more. But ritually, you're going to drink 4 cups of wine. Ideally wine, not grape juice. Ideally red. So Kaddish, I'm saying the Hebrew word for the making of the Kiddush, means 2 things in Hebrew. It means separation and it means sanctification. And those 2 things are interwoven. When we set ourselves free from the things imprisoning us, when we're separate from that prison, then we can sanctify it. So we're talking tonight, and I've already said until now, we're going to keep talking about this. I said this is the same theme. I'm going to say it again and again and again all night. Spiritual freedom. Kaddish is telling me the first step of the 15 steps, making the Kiddush, the word itself is telling me you achieve spiritual freedom by separating from all those things that are blocking you, and then by sanctifying them. We're going to separate. We're going to detach from the physical to then sanctify the physical, to use the physical as an expression of God, to use the physical. This whole night is full of physical, the wine and the bitter herbs and the matzah and the meal, lots of physical stuff going on. But all of that physical, and truly our whole physical lives, is to express a higher purpose, to express God, to express the spiritual. The physical is the vehicle to the spiritual. That's the message of Kaddish. Separate, detach, so then you can sanctify, so you can use all the physical around you to serve God. So we want to shift. Okay, this is the goal of tonight's class, the Seder that we're talking about. We want to go from being a slave to being free. So each step of the way, there's how the slave would view it, but we want to shift that and be free. So I'm giving you practical thoughts to think about as you do your Seder. As you're going to sit and do your Seder, what you should think about step by step by step to make this a very personal, real journey to personal freedom. So the slave says, from the Kaddish perspective, I'm satisfied. I'm not going to change. I'm, sitting at the Seder because it's a ritual, because it's tradition, because I'm Jewish minded. So I want to do some Jewish thing. I know my parents did it and my grandparents did it. Actually, we've been doing it for over 100 generations. We've been doing this for 3,300 some years. So all of your ancestors did it. So I'm doing it too, but it's just, it's just a formality, and then we're going to have a good meal. That's a slave mentality. Our goal tonight is to get free. The free mindset is, I can change. I'm here to change. I want to change. That's what the Seder is supposed to achieve. That's what Passover is supposed to achieve. That's what, in general, my whole Judaism is supposed to achieve. I can change. So that's step 1. Remember, we have 15 steps. Kaddish, drinking the wine. Kaddish, separation and sanctification. Separate from the physical to be able to sanctify the physical, to use it to serve God. I want to be free. I can change. Step 2. Orchatz. Orchatz is the ritual washing of the hands. This is, we're going to wash the hands. Usually we wash the hands like this, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, before we eat bread. But there's also a Jewish law that if you're going to eat a wet fruit or vegetable, you also have to wash your hands ritually, or dry them, dry the fruit or vegetable. So now we're going to eat a wet fruit or vegetable because we're going to take a piece of onion or boiled potato and dip it in salt water and eat it. It's wet. So I ritually wash my hands, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, no blessing, just to be able to hold this wet onion or potato and eat it. That's the physical reason. There's, as I'm saying, it's all very spiritual. Washing hands is purity. This is my hands. This is how I interact with my environment. This is expressing what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. And a lot of times it gets very muddled. It gets dirty. It gets unclear. I'm washing them. I'm purifying them. I'm removing the impurities. Water also symbolizes God's wisdom. I want to take my hands. I want to take the way I interact with my world. I want to have that interface clean and pure, not distorted, not disoriented, not just instinctive, knee-jerk response to the world. I don't want to be a slave. A slave just reacts. I want to be free. To be free, I'm purifying my hands. I'm washing my hands. I'm cleansing my hands with God's wisdom to be mindful, to let my mind and heart talk to each other, and to approach everything in my life mindfully, with pure hands, with godly hands. Third step, karpas. Karpas means I take that vegetable I was just discussing, the small little piece of onion, raw onion, or little piece of boiled potato. I dip it in salt water. Salt water is sort of tasting the humility. It's also, salt water is the tears. I'm remembering that harsh labor in Egypt. As I said, God was very kind. We were supposed to be enslaved for 400 years. We were enslaved for 116, a harsh, oppressively 86, but that's a lot of tears. 116 years of slavery is a lot of tears. 86 years of oppressive slavery is a lot of tears. And that was all God's deliberate design. It wasn't random that we were enslaved. It wasn't random. It was 86 years for that matter. I could go into that also, but probably don't have time. It was to help us liberate ourselves. So we have to remember this. That's the message of the karpas. Again, if I'm eating the onion, it's an even stronger message because the onion's a little bitter also, gives me a little bit of bitterness, and the salt water gives me a little bit of bitterness. And it's sort of remembering sometimes there's harsh things. And I always have a choice. I could look at my life and see God in my life, see God in the details, see God in what might be the harsh details. And I can humble myself to God and accept this as God and accept this as part of God's love for me. The 86 harsh years was God's deliberate design to burn out all the impurities in us, to make us fit to be his people, to burn out any residual energy from the idolatrous roots we started with, to burn out any of our impurities. So I can humble myself. Again, we said this is about liberation. Liberation is all about humility. The matzah is the food of the poor man, the food of humility. So I can humble myself to God, taste the bitter onion in the salt water, remember the tears, taste the bitterness, taste the pain, and feel humbled and accepting it as God's will or not. And if not, the world will humble us in a much harsher way. If I just run after the materialism of the world, if that becomes my idol, you could get humbled that way as well. But that's a harsher road to humility. So the slave-minded person is enslaved to the world. He's enslaved to his work. He's enslaved to his money. He's enslaved to his possessions. But tonight we want to be free. So we want to understand that everything in my life is a tool to access higher. I want to be nullified to God, not to materialism. So we went through the first step, karpas, right? I can change. I can sanctify myself. I can detach from the world. Washing of the hands, cleansing the way I interface with this world, being mindful, connecting my mind and my heart to God. Karpas, eating that onion in salt water or that potato in salt water. Saying I want to be enslaved to God, not to the world. I don't want the harshness of the world to humble me. I want to humble myself to God. Yachatz. The fourth step is yachatz. Now, we said that there are 3 matzahs in the Seder plate. Now, of course, as you're probably familiar, on Sabbath, on a holiday, we have 2 whole breads. On Passover, we start off with 3 because we take the middle matzah and break it. So we have at the end, the top and the bottom matzah that are still whole for the whole matzahs we're going to have by our eating of our matzah. But the middle matzah right away here, got a long time until we're going to start eating anything, we break. We break the middle matzah. And again, everything I'm saying, there's so much to talk about. There's so much more to say about anything I'm touching on. But I just want to give people a glimpse of what it means to have a present Seder, to have a Seder where they really are thinking and trying to apply it to themselves and do the work to access each person. Take whatever you can to access your freedom. So we break the middle matzah, which is sort of saying there's a lot of brokenness in our world. And we're like, why? Why does God make a world with so many things that are broken? Why are we breaking a matzah in the Seder? Seder is such a joyous time. Why are we breaking a matzah? So Hasidus explains that something whole can only contain its measure, but if it's broken, it has no limits. It can contain infinity. Matzah is poor man's bread, we said. Matzah is low, matzah is broken, and that allows me to be open, to escape my Egypt. Because if I feel whole, if I'm full, there's no room to grow. I'm done. I'm a done story. I'm a done deal. When I realize that I'm fragmented, when I realize I need other people around me, when I realize within myself things are missing, when I feel that brokenness, then I can grow. You know, Hasidus has an expression, there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. Meaning when I'm all full and self-content and complacent, I've got nowhere to move to. When I'm not, I can be free. So the slave says, I know who I am. I know what I've achieved. I'm full. And the person who's freedom-minded, the person sitting at the Seder like you, and growing and moving and understanding this is God giving us an experience and an opportunity, an experiential opportunity to really change. The free person says, there's so much I'm lacking. I've only started to grow. I want to grow. I want to move. I'm satisfied where I am. I've got so much I want to achieve. That's a free person. And a person who says, me, I'm good, I'm done, that's the slave. So those were the first 4 steps: the kiddush, the washing of the hands, the eating of the vegetable in the salt water, the breaking the middle matzah. And now we come to step 5, which is the heart of the Seder, meaning this is what takes the longest time. The other steps don't take so long. This takes a long, long, long time because this is really the heart of it, which is the Magid. The Magid is telling the story, remembering Egypt. And as I keep saying, remembering everything in Egypt parallels me, my life today in 2022 in America. So I want to look at me. I want to look at myself through this guise of, ancient Egypt and really understand how I can find my own freedom. That is the idea. So again, the slave says, well, I'm free. I live in America, the 21st century. I mean, we've never been freer in our world. And the free person says, I'm free when my soul is free. My goal tonight is to help free my soul. That's what I'm doing through the Seder. That's what every one of us are going to be doing in almost 3 weeks. And sorry, that's really a wrong way to put it, in more like 2 weeks. We're going to do the Seder to help free our soul. Now, I was looking at the different passages in the Magid, which is really the heart of the Seder, and we're telling everything. And there were so many passages, and there was so much to talk about. So I sort of said, I'm not going to do anything. And then at the end, I decided to do one idea, because I always find this very interesting. And for the past few years, I've been going to my son's Seder in Springfield. So of course, most people there, besides my family, are completely unaffiliated. But there's one thing they all know. They know the song of Dayenu. It's very interesting to me that one song somehow stuck, because Dayenu is a very, very powerful passage. It's towards the very end of Magid, and most secular Americans, when they reach it, they sing it. And what does Dayenu mean? Dayenu means it would have been enough for us. It's a very deep idea. What we're saying in Dayenu is we're appreciating God every single step of the way. Meaning in our world, we appreciate the finish line. When we get what we want, oh, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Dayenu is saying there are many steps. And each step we say, God, thank you. If you just stopped here, that would have already been enough. What do you mean that would have been enough? We didn't get anywhere. We're so many steps away from the finish line. Doesn't make a difference. Each step we stop, we breathe, we praise God, we appreciate. And I think that's such a profound, simple, and profound idea that we always want to remember in our quest for freedom is every step of the way, stop and thank God. Stop and appreciate God, because there's so much that God's giving us every single step of the way. All right, we're up to step 6 of the Seder. We did the Kiddush, the sanctification, the separation. We washed our hands. We purified the way we interface with this world. We ate the onion or potato in the salt water, remembering the bitterness as part of the process and humbling ourselves to God. Breaking the middle matzah, looking at what's broken and realizing that's an opportunity for growth, a reflection on what we're lacking. This took a long time. In my class, it's taking like 2 minutes, but we're doing the Magid. We're understanding if I want to be free, my soul has to be free. And that's what I'm discussing throughout the Magid. And now we get up to step 6. And you know what we do in step 6? We wash our hands again. What's going on? Why do we wash our hands twice? Well, we washed our hands 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I told you, because to eat a wet fruit or vegetable, you have to have your hands washed. And I said that's very spiritual, and it means a purification of the hands, and the hands is how we interface with this world and our emotions and our intellect. It's all through our hands, especially as Jews, we always talk with our hands. But now we're doing it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because we're going to eat the bread. Before you eat bread, in this case on Passover, our bread is matzah. We got to wash our hands to purify. It's a very deep point our sages are saying in having this hand washing twice in the Seder. What they're saying is, that's something you have to understand about freedom. Freedom is not something that you can do, achieve, and like cross off your checklist. Yay, I did it. I achieved freedom. Now I'm a free Jew. No. Freedom you do, and then you do, and then you do, and then you do. When we left Egypt, it gave us eternal freedom because it gave us the power to be free, the power to transcend our situation. So, as I said to you, the sages say every day we're supposed to leave Egypt. What do you mean every day? If I left Egypt yesterday, what do I leave today? A more refined Egypt, a more subtle Egypt. In Egypt, since Egypt, remember we said we're getting out of Egypt, which is limitations, Pharaoh, which is ego. Every day I have new limitations and new ego I didn't realize yesterday. Because yesterday I saw a more simple, more overt limitation and ego. Once I got past that, I see a more subtle one, a more refined one. And once I get past that, I see a more subtle one and more refined one. So the sages put hand washing twice in our 15-step ritual journey to freedom to give us this very important message. Again, the slave-minded person, oh, I did Passover already. The free person says, I'm always doing Passover. There's always new insights. There's always new growth. There's always new ways to grow that I didn't realize yesterday. I'm constantly washing my hands. I'm constantly purifying myself. I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly doing Passover. 7 and 8 are the 2 blessings we say because we're about to eat the matzah, right? We washed our hands. Again, on the physical plane, we're washing our hands because we're not about to eat bread. The bread is matzah. And we make 2 blessings on the matzah. So step 7, which in the Hebrew we call moitzi, is the traditional blessing we make on bread every single day of the year. And step 8, which is called matzah, is a special blessing we make on matzah, because matzah is on the night of the Seder. It's a mitzvah. It's actually a biblical mitzvah. It's the only biblical mitzvah we have left, so to speak, from the Seder, which is to eat matzah. So 7 is the blessing on the bread, hamoitzi, lechem min haaretz, moitzi, and 8 is the special blessing on the matzah. And because everything tonight has lots of spiritual ripples, so do these blessings. So the blessing for the bread starts off as a seed in the ground. And then the seed decomposes, it rots, it loses its original form, and then it begins to sprout and grow. And then we have the grain, and then we can harvest it, and then we can make bread. I just simplified many months of a process. So that's like our journey. You know, so the slave is a person who says, I'm stuck underground, rotting away. And the free person is like, I'm decomposing to grow. Life, this is a message we're seeing several times in the Seder. Life does this to us. The seed rots. It decomposes to have new life, to become something much bigger than a seed, to become a whole grain, to become bread, to become matzah, to become a thing far bigger than this little seed. But to go through that process, it starts by rotting in the ground. And only then can it sprout and grow. And that's really a very strong lesson, which again, we saw already in the breaking the matzah. We saw in dipping the onion or potato in the water. This is just saying very strongly, my challenges in life help me discover my strengths. The strength of my soul comes out in my challenges. All of us are that seed rotting in the ground, and we have an opportunity to just rot or to grow. The bread, the blessing on the bread is saying grow, become something big. And then we come to the matzah. And as we said, matzah is the highlight. Matzah is the most important thing of the whole Seder. Matzah is the most important thing of the whole Passover. Matzah is eating faith. Matzah is eating humility. Matzah is eating godliness. I make a point to have matzah every single day of Passover, because if I have an opportunity to eat faith and eat humility and eat godliness, I'm going to take that opportunity and go with it. This is literally, physically, I'm eating and changing. So when you eat that matzah, be a free person, eat and know you are feeding your soul. You are feeding your soul, the matzah. So what I'd like to do now is stop and go. We're up to like step 9 of the 15 steps of the Seder. But I'd like to now speak about some of the practical things, because we have like 15 minutes left, and I think we might need 15 minutes for it. Think of the practical things we need to do to make Passover. So obviously for some people, this will be a review. This will be something that they totally know. And for some people, this might be new information. But this is really very, very, very important, because this is how we are going to practically make our Passover. So Passover begins Friday night, April 15th. So you say, oh, okay, so I can eat my bread sandwich until Friday night. No. There's the laws start already in the morning. So this is Friday, April 15th. Today is April 4th. We're talking about 11 days away. On Friday, April 15th, from 10 in the morning, you are not allowed to eat any chametz, anything leavened. Bread, cake, rolls, cookies, crackers, obvious, anything made from grain, perfumes, alcohol, vinegars. Almost every product on our shelf could have leaven in it, because everything's processed, so you never know what's in anything. So all of the laws, and they're very, very significant, start really from 10 in the morning on Friday, April 15th. From then, we have to desist from any use of chametz, of anything leavened. We actually ritually burn our chametz. Any chametz that we did not sell, as I'll soon talk about selling chametz. We can lock away and sell our chametz, but anything we don't sell and we have out, we burn. And we, the night before, on Thursday night, ritually put out 10 pieces of bread to make sure we have something to burn. We burn the chametz, and we say a passage nullifying any chametz still in our ownership before 11:25 Friday morning. This is very important. It's very spiritual. If you read that passage in the English, you have to understand what you're saying. So obviously read it in the English or the Russian. It is amazingly spiritual words, much more overtly spiritual than our prayers usually are. And we're really talking about burning out all of the inner evil. So it's very important to read that passage. Also, legally, it's very important because we are nullifying ownership of anything leaven we own. We don't own it. I don't care if it's in my house. I don't own it. I don't see it. I locked it up. I sold it. And if there's anything I missed, I don't own it. So every one of you must say that passage Friday, April 15th, before 11:25. You want to say it 8 in the morning? No problem. Make sure you say it before 11:25. Can you say it Thursday night? No. You have to say it Friday morning. You can say it as early as you want Friday morning. You cannot say it after 11:25. And the holiday begins Friday night at 7:13. And then we make the blessings. We're going to make a blessing that combines the Sabbath and the holiday because it's Friday night. And we'll also make a blessing of Shechianu, which we always make by a holiday. And then we have the Seder, which we've been talking about all night now. The Seder is one of the most ancient ritual we have in our world, in the Western world for sure. It's been passed down 3,300 plus years, which means we've been keeping it for over 100 generations. All of your ancestors experienced the Seder. The Seder, as we've been doing tonight, we've been explaining, we got about halfway through explaining the Seder, is tremendous spirituality and history, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. And it's something very experiential. We're going to eat the bitter herbs to taste the slavery, the past and the current. We're going to eat the matzah to taste the godliness, to taste the humility, to taste and eat that faith in God. We're going to drink the wine to experience that liberation, that freedom, that joy. We spoke tonight about the special Seder plate. The Seder plate has, as we said, remember we said it has 10 items, 3 matzahs covered by a plate. If you don't have a plate, you just put like a lot of foil or something to hold and contain whatever is on top of it. I'm going to briefly go through this in case you don't know, because I want to make sure everyone knows how to do the Seder. So we have 3 matzahs. Those matzahs are not the Manischewitz square machine matzahs. Go to Jewel. Check out Mariano's or Hungarian if that's closer to you. Call before to make sure they have it. You want handmade round shmura matzah. That's the most intently spiritual matzah. You're eating godliness, you're eating faith, you're eating humility. That matzah, ideally you should eat it the entire Passover, but at least for sure for the 2 Seders. You need 3 matzahs for the Seder plate. Even if it's just you, one person doing it, you still need your 3 matzahs for the Seder plate. And I'm going to explain to you how to make a Seder plate on top. Again, I'm going to go through the whole thing if you can or can't do this, but at least to understand the idea. We said there are 6 items on the Seder plate. So on your Seder plate, on the upper right corner, you're going to make 2 triangles with 6 items. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. The upper right corner, you roast the neck of a chicken bone or a shank bone, roast it. You don't want to have so much meat on it, but have some. So you don't want to be totally bare, but pick out a lot of the meat, but leave some roasted. Put that in the upper right corner. That is the only item of these 6 items that we actually don't eat. So if you make one, that's fine. You could use it both nights because we don't eat it. If after the 2 Seders, meaning the next morning, you want to eat it Sunday morning, enjoy. My kids always enjoy it. But the 2 Seders, we don't eat it at all. You got to wait for the next morning to eat it. That's the upper right corner. On the upper left corner, we have a hard-boiled egg that we are going to dip in salt water and eat at the beginning of our meal. Then at the base of that triangle, we have our shank bone or our neck bone, chicken neck bone. We have our hard-boiled egg. And at the base, we have what we call our murr, our bitter herbs, which traditionally is romaine lettuce and horseradish. That's the base. We're going to eat that when we eat the murr, which we were just about talking about when we stopped discussing what happens on the Seder. So again, we have our chicken neck bone or shank bone, our egg that we eat in the beginning of the meal, and our murr that we eat when we eat the murr. Then we have our next lower triangle, where we have in the lower right corner, our charoses. Charoses is supposed to look like the mortar. It's a combination of ground nuts, apples, pears, and wine. That's what we dip the maror into and then shake it off a bit. So we just have a tiny taste of that sweet maror in our bitter herbs. On the left side, the lower left, we have that vegetable that we discussed dipping in the beginning of the meal, what we call our karpas, either a piece of raw onion or a piece of boiled potato. And at the base of that triangle, we again have maror. That's the maror we eat in the sandwich. So we had our chicken neck or shank bone that we don't eat at all. It's memorable of the Passover offering. We don't eat it. We have our boiled egg that we eat at the beginning of the meal. We have our maror that we eat maror. And then we have the next triangle. We have our charosas that we dip the maror into. We have that vegetable that we eat in the beginning that we dip in salt water. And we have another portion of maror for the second time we eat maror, because we eat maror twice. The bitter herbs we eat twice. We eat it in our sandwich of maror and matzah, bitter herbs and matzah, that we will continue discussing next week. And again, we have under there our matzah. As I said, the most important part is matzah. If you're not going to do anything else, make sure you eat matzah Friday night and Saturday night. You can probably eat the matzah from about 8:30. I will tell you accurately next week, because I forgot to check that time. I knew there was something I forgot, so I forgot to check that time, but I think 8:30 is about the earliest. Don't eat it before then. To eat the matzah, if you do nothing else, if you blow away this whole Seder, if you don't do any of these 15 steps, you don't drink your 4 cups of wine, you don't eat your bitter herbs, you don't say anything, make sure you eat the matzah, handmade shmura matzah that you can buy at Jewel or Hungarian or Mariano's. It's super important. Minimally, at least, each one of you should eat more than a third of a round shmura matzah. Very, very, very important. What's also very important, as we said, is for this entire holiday from Friday, April 15th, from Friday morning, April 15th, 10 o'clock, until Saturday night, April 23rd, about 5 minutes to 9. So from Friday morning, April 15th, 10, the whole Friday and Saturday, then the whole next week until Saturday night, about 9 o'clock, 5 to 9, April 23rd, no using of any leaven products. Again, hummus, that could be bread, that could be cake, that could be crackers, that could be cookies, that could be alcohol, anything grain-based, it could be perfume, it could be vinegar. There's so many things in our world that are grain-based. You wouldn't imagine, because everything's processed, so everything has everything in it. So it's very, very important not to use this. It's very important not to see it. It's very important not to own it. So we clean everything to remove anything that might be there. Anything that we can't use over Passover, but we still own, we have to put away that we don't see it, which means put it in a box, put it in a cabinet and lock the cabinet with a piece of tape, lock it with a rope, everything put away that you don't see it. And those items that you didn't throw away and you don't burn and you don't eat before Passover, you must sell them to a non-Jew. You are not allowed to own anything leavened for the entire Passover. It doesn't make a difference if you took all your cookies and your crackers and you put it in your cabinet and you put a tape over it. You still own it. You're not transgressing seeing it, but you're still transgressing owning it. So you cannot own it. But what do? I got a lot of cookies in my life. So our sages said you can sell it to a non-Jew and buy it back after the holiday. Now, this is not simple. You could say, oh, great, I know lots of wonderful non-Jews. I'll sell them my leaven and I'll buy it back. No. This is a very, very complicated sale. It is not something a common person can do, because there's way too many laws about it. It's a very complicated legal transaction. So don't just go to your local, friendly, wonderful non-Jew and sell them your leaven. What you can do, which is so simple, is send me your name, your spouse's name, your address. You could WhatsApp it to me. You could text it to me. You could email it to me. Send me all your information. I will give it to my husband. He will graciously sell all of your chametz, all of your leaven for you. He's not charging for the service at all. He wants to help you. We want to help you not transgress this major prohibition. What do you need to do? You have to write down your name, if you're married, your spouse's name, your address. If you work outside your home and you have any food items there, write down that address. Your car, if you ever have food in your car, most of us do at some point. If you have a summer home, that any addresses, any place in the world where you own leaven, where food goes, send it all to me. We will sell it for you. We will sell it right before the holiday, Friday morning, early morning, it gets sold. It will be bought back right after the holiday. So Saturday night, April 23rd, you can feel free to use it again. This is very important. This is to prevent you from transgressing a major biblical prohibition. So how do you do all this? So we said you need to clean. You need to clean everything very well to make sure you don't have random bread or cookie crumbs or other things that could be leaven anywhere in your house. And then you need to check to make sure there's nothing leavened. For me, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I have like random drawers in my parents' house of
So
like
you have to
lotions
list
and
them. You have to
perfumes,
list that address.
or
If you
it's
have
not part
random
of theirs.
drawers in your parents' house, you own the things. When you sell your hummus, you have to list your parents' address
Oh, okay.
and write those drawers. Just say you have drawers in this address.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
You make sure they're taped up if they could potentially have hummus in them, but you have to list them in your bill of sale. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like all my children that go away to school, we list all their school addresses and whatever they have there because yeah, absolutely. 100%.
And what about storages? I have
Absolutely. You would list the address of your storages, 100%. If you have anything in storage, you list the address of the storages. I have stuff in storage. I always list my storage addresses. Anywhere you list your cars, anything you have that potentially has chametz in it, that has leaven in it, you write it down and then the rabbis sell it for you. So it's very simple. Doesn't cost you anything to write more down. Just write it all down and be as detailed as possible in writing it down. Absolutely. So you need to clean your whole house, especially your kitchen, from all leaven. You need to remove or close up, lock everything that you did not get rid of, meaning the rabbi said you don't have to get rid of it, but you have to close it up so you don't see it. You know, put it in a bag and tape the bag, put it in the cabinet, tape the cabinet, tie it with rope. So clean everything so there's nothing random floating around. And whatever you know you have, your perfumes, your alcohol, your food products that are leavened, put them in some place where you're not going to see it, where there's a clear, so to speak, lock on it. The lock could be a piece of tape covering the cabinet, but that's still, it's a sign that I'm not allowed to open it over Passover. That counts as a lock. And then you need to ritually check, and you need to, your kitchen, you have to make it kosher. The same way if a kitchen's not kosher, you have to go through a process called making it kosher, from not kosher to kosher. You have to go through the exact same process from leaven to Passover. So every single Jewish kitchen has to be made kosher for Passover. Well, my kitchen's 100% kosher. No, it's kosher for all year round. It's not kosher for Passover. To make your kitchen kosher for Passover, you have to go through the process of making it kosher. The same way, the same intensity, like you have to make a kitchen kosher from not kosher, it's equally intense to make it kosher from regular kosher to Passover kosher. And then what are you going to eat for a week if I'm telling you that everything is suspicious besides raw fruits and vegetables? So you can trust your raw potatoes or your eggs or your apples, but you can't trust anything processed because who knows what's in it? Well, nowadays we have no problems because we live in America and the shelves are stocked with kosher for Passover items. So again, if you go to Jewel or a Mariano's or a Hungarian, you will see everything imaginable kosher for Passover. So after you cleaned everything and you put away your leaven and you covered it and you locked it with your piece of tape or something, now you could fill your kitchen with all this kosher for Passover items. So don't worry, you will eat galore for the 8 days of Passover, but everything the rabbi certified and said, yes, this is kosher for Passover. Make sure again, so this is, we're talking here about two major things: getting rid of all the leaven, not eating any of that, not owning any of that, because you're going to sell it all through my husband, not seeing any of that, you're going to clean it all. And anything you missed, you nullified, because you said that passage Friday morning, April 15th before 11:25. and eating a lot of matzah, handmade round shmura matzah, the whole Passover, and really, really, really trying to take in this freedom, this journey to freedom that we're discussing that happens both nights of the Seder, happens the entire Passover, and as we're going to discuss next week, really climaxes and crescendos in the last 2 days of the holiday. But anyone has any questions on anything I said tonight or any other details of Passover? Rachel.
Do I have to cover glass if I have glass cabinets? It's not enough to tape it.
Do you have like cutlery there or glasses or bowls or something like that? Things that have used food?
I have glasses. I have.
Yes, you have to cover it. You have to cover it.
I have
You're
to
not
cover
allowed because there's a, thank you for mentioning that. The reason we have to cover it is because there's a prohibition on seeing anything leavened. So if you have a glass china cabinet with crystal glasses, I'm not allowed to see those glasses over Passover. So if it was a wooden cabinet, no big deal. I put a piece of tape over it, done. I don't see it. I see the tape. I'm not going to open it. I sold it to the non-Jew for the week. All is great. But if it's glass, even if I have the piece of tape, I still see it. So I'm transgressing this biblical prohibition. So that's why I just take silver foil, cover it, or take, it's even more economical. You could take wrapping paper, like brown wrapping paper or something like that. Just cover it, tape it on the sides. You take it all down after the holiday.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Yes. So about raw food. So what about sprouts? Like can I sprout like seeds and mung beans, things like that? Or it's
We
raw?
don't eat beans. I don't think so, because we don't eat beans on Passover.
No, sprouted. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, right. Okay.
We don't eat it because they would be considered kidneys.
That's right. Thanks.
So what we're very careful. Now, again, I'm answering Rachel because I know she will be careful with this. Within Passover, there's layers, levels and levels and levels on what you do or don't eat. But some people are careful to not eat anything that could produce a flour-like substance. So therefore they don't eat beans and they don't eat rice and they don't eat any of these things. They don't eat corn because these things could produce a substance like flour. And other people say, no, they're not flour, so it's not a problem. So again, plenty of people eat that on Passover and plenty of people don't. And if you ever heard the term kidneys, that's what the term means. Items that produce a flour-like substance, not flour, but it's flour-like, so it's Passover, so we're getting nervous. The sages felt if you could produce a flour from rice, people might get confused and say, I'm allowed to eat that. They could think they could eat regular flour also. So to keep us away from the concept completely, they said anything that can produce the flour, better not to eat on Passover. Any other questions? There's plenty of delicious food to eat, fear not. Any other questions?
Actually, one. In times of Mashiach, are we going to be doing this no chametz?
Great question. It's not so clear. Meaning definitely we're going to be having a Seder, we're going to be having the Paschal offering, we're going to have our Matzah, we're going to have our Maror. That's a commandment. It does seem that some prohibitions we won't have anymore, but some we will. So I don't know. But I don't know. And there's room to assume one way, there's room to assume another. God willing, soon we should find out. But definitely we still will have our Passover, we still will have our matzah, we still will have our maror, our bitter herbs, and we'll have our roasted lamb for the Paschal offering. That now we just have that little shank bone or chicken neck on our Seder plate. We're going to have the real deal roasted lamb. And it's, again, going to be such an amazing experience. The entire Jewish people in Israel on the exact same day, all offering the same offering to God. Unbelievable experience. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Sorry, I have another Mashiach question. You said about Nisan that that's the time when Mashiach comes. So why are we preparing and like ready all year round for Mashiach? If
Great
you're saying it's going to
question.
happen
Great
in
question.
Nisan.
Because there's what's considered the most auspicious times. So obviously, there's certain days of the week that are more auspicious, certain dates that are holy we view as very auspicious. But in terms of months, the sages are debating what is the most auspicious month for redemption. And the sages give actually two options. Some of the sages say the most auspicious month for redemption is Tishrei, the month of the high holidays. And other sages say it's Nisan, the month of the Exodus. And they debate it, and the sages that said Nisan win the argument. They prove themselves right. So therefore, all the sages concur that Nisan, the month that began on Shabbos 2 days ago, is the most auspicious month for redemption. That doesn't mean redemption couldn't have come a week ago. It could come potentially any day. But we're talking about the most auspicious days, just like we were talking tonight at length about the idea of freedom, attaining spiritual freedom. And I'm telling you, the whole Passover is an amazing time, and especially the Seders. So I can't achieve spiritual freedom today? Of course you can achieve spiritual freedom today. And I hope you do. And our sages say you should leave Egypt every single day of your life. So every single day you should achieve spiritual freedom. But there's some times that are most auspicious, that it's the easiest because the energy is so strong. So Passover is the easiest time to achieve spiritual freedom. Within Passover, the 2 times of the Seder are especially potent to achieve spiritual freedom. But that doesn't mean you can't achieve it today, and you should. So it's the same thing with Mashiach. Mashiach should come every single day of the year. And certain days are, oh my gosh, such a special holy day. Of course, that's a day for Mashiach to come. But from a month's perspective, the most auspicious month is Nisan. And from a day of the year's perspective, the most auspicious day for Mashiach is the final day of Passover, as we will discuss next week. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Yes, I have one question. So as far as the koshering granite, you know, the countertops, are you allowed to kosher, or it has to be covered also?
You have to do both. You kosher it and you cover it.
Yeah, so you do have to cover it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Thank you.
We cover everything. Because it's Passover and we're so strict, we kosher and then we cover. Just because we go crazy because it's Passover.
Yeah, yeah.
In other words, it's really interesting, but people like sometimes it's hard to process this, but the transition from regular to Passover is in a sense more strict than the transition from not kosher to kosher. It's that intense, the biblical prohibition of leaven. It's so intense, and it's prohibited in even the tiniest amount. So the fact that we made it kosher, we're still nervous. So we cover it after we make it kosher. We do both. But granite, you can make kosher. That's a great reason to have granite. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, so we will stop at this point. Please, I'm doing my sales pitch. Send me, you can text, WhatsApp, email me your name, if you're married, your spouse's name, your address, your work address, your storage address, your cars if they're not cleaned and can have potentially food crumbs in them. Anything if you have items in other places, anywhere that you potentially own that has leaven, send it to me and my husband will make sure it is sold. You will not own it for the duration of the holiday. So even if you do nothing else, you are saved from this huge biblical prohibition. And go to Jewel or Mariano's or Hungarian and buy your handmade round shmura matzah and make sure to eat it every day. And do whatever you can to clean out the leaven and try to eat products like vegetables, fruits, and kosher for Passover products, because anything processed is potentially has leaven in it. It's just our world today. We live in a world where once it's processed, we got no clue what's in it. So it's very hard, but there's lots of kosher for Passover products, and, you know, regular meat, fish, eggs, fruits, vegetables, generally should all be good. All right. Thank you so much for all the extra time. Looking forward to continuing this next week.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful week and happy preparing for Passover.